So welcome back to the Sabbath at Midnight. I'm your host, Lionel Tavares, along here with co-host Dominic. And tonight we have a very special guest, someone who I've been wanting to talk to for a long time, who's definitely going to touch on a lot of subjects like UFOs and, of course, Skinwalker Ranch and many other things. His name, just a little bit about him, his name is Jonathan Dover, is a veteran law enforcement officer. He's worked with the city of Winslow, Arizona Police Department, the National Park Service, Navajo Historic Preservation Department, and the Navajo Nation Rangers. He retired from active duty as a lieutenant in 2011. After 31 years, Dover attended the 6-month Navajo Nation Police Academy and graduated with awards in marksmanship, academic achievement, and as an astounding cadet. He trained at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in criminal investigation and has over 4,000 hours of law enforcement and weapons training. So with that being said, that's a lot of credentials right there from a man who's going to tell you everything from his personal experience. And with all that being said, you should take his word as it is. So without further ado, Mr. Jonathan Dover, please introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Jonathan Redbird Dover. I'm, of course, Native American. I'm Navajo. I'm part what they used to call Kiowa Apache. It is now called Apache Tribe of Oklahoma. And I'm part Southern Cheyenne. And on the Southern Cheyenne side, I come from the line of Chief White Antelope, who was killed at the Sand Creek Massacre. And I'm part Filipino. Oh. So on the Filipino side, my grandfather was a Philippine scout. And back in the 1917, he was in the U.S. military and was got on board a transport ship with the Army, the A.T. Sherman, and they were bringing doughboys back from overseas. So that's how he got to the United States. My grandmother on her side, my great-grandmother, actually was included in the roundup, the march to Bosque Redondo, which is something anywhere from 250 to 300 miles of walking, forest walking, kind of like the Bataan Death March. She, as a little girl, escaped from Bosque Redondo. She made it through military patrols, through slavers, through Ute scouts looking for them, settlers that had a reward if they caught anyone, dead or alive, and just a whole range of people out there. And she made it all the way back home. Chief White Antelope was the leader of the Dog Soldiers and with the Cheyennes. And he was a peace chief who had met the President of the United States and was given a peace medal. And that medal has disappeared since Sand Creek. So we're still looking for that one. And then on the Kiowa Apache side, we come from the line of Josephine Coso, who had adopted my great-grandmother. And her husband, Captain Coso, was one of the first recognized chiefs of the Kiowa Apaches. So quite an extensive background, but with Native Americans, that's how you introduce yourself.
Amen to that, sir. So with all that, I mean, that's a lot of information. You got a big ancestral background. Dominic, if anything to say, but with that being said, I would love for you to start, if you can, maybe before we get to the Skinwalker Ranch, let's start off with any first experiences you had before the Skinwalker Ranch. Dominic, if anything else to say, go ahead.
No, I think that's a good place to start. Kind of like what your experiences working as a Navajo Ranger, going through those stories, and how that led up to you getting involved with Skinwalker.
Yes.
Well, essentially, all of these strange things were happening all the time. UFO sightings were pretty common where I live, which is northeast of Flagstaff, about maybe 50 miles. So we had I've seen UFOs. I've seen cigars, saucers or discs. Um, I've seen squares, triangles, orbs, round balls, just all different kinds of stuff. And as a law enforcement officer, you didn't talk about this kind of stuff. You knew it was going on, but nobody ever bothered with it. It was just one of those things. Later on, as I'm working in about 2000, I was a lieutenant, and my partner Stan, he was a sergeant, and we were in a section called Special Projects. Special Projects did all the I like to think of it as all the cool stuff. We got to do dignitary protection for people that were running for Navajo Nation president. We would accompany them as personal bodyguards. We accompanied VIPs that were coming onto the reservation, Johnny Depp, Arnold Schwarzenegger, those kind of people, Nicolas Cage, Robert Redford. So, and then we also did pull security for different bands that were coming on the reservation, like Korn and Metallica and what have you. Stan was assigned to work with the film crew that was filming The Lone Ranger with Arnie Hammer and Johnny Depp. And he was also assigned to the, they had an attempt to jump the Little Colorado River Gorge on a motorcycle or a rocket or something. We also had the Red Bull Air Race show up in Monument Valley, and for the first time ever, fly over dry land, doing aerobatics. So we had a lot of interesting things going on. I was a certified criminal investigator, and as such, we got cases from other departments, sexual harassment cases, embezzlement cases, very, very complicated cases that would have to be investigated and reports written. One of my reports, I think it took up two big 3-ring binders of information when it was submitted. So out of all this, we had a couple of rangers that were assigned to take a report of a Bigfoot that had stepped over an elderly woman's corral, wow, tucked a sheep up under its arm, and stepped back over and walked off.
Whoa.
So this was up in the Chusca mountain range, up in the Pine Tree area. The two rangers that were assigned, if you knew these guys, they're both, we call them jokers. They were rookies at the time. They're always laughing, joking with each other, always got a private joke that they're giggling about. And I guess Grandma, who is elderly and speaks only Navajo, saw them laughing and assumed that they were laughing at her. So she took exception to that. She called our chief ranger, and basically chewed him out in Navajo, which is pretty bad because with elders, you're not supposed to talk back. You're supposed to just listen.
Absolutely.
So he called a department-wide meeting, and everybody from all over the reservation came in, and our chief ranger told us, he says, from now on, these cases will be investigated professionally. They'll be documented. And then he turned to me and Stan, and he says, and you two are going to get the major cases.
Oh, wow.
And so I like to tell people that we were voluntold.
Yeah.
we didn't raise our hands or anything. It was an assignment. Shortly after that, we started doing investigations, and by the end, we were doing around 60 cases a year. Everything from UFOs, Bigfoot cases, hauntings, and poltergeist activity, wow, and Navajo skinwalkers.
How did all this, like with all this, because I know I live where I live, and we've had encounters with weird stuff, UFOs, and, when you call the cops or the law enforcement, they laugh at you. So I just want to know how that went down. Like, you were being told to investigate these cases. When you brought it to your higher officer, how did he take it? Did he take it serious? Because usually when you call,
our chief ranger basically said that a lot of these people were terrorized.
Okay.
They were just fearful, and our job was to provide a service to help them if we could. And so we would go out there. We guaranteed anonymity. We wouldn't divulge anybody's names. The reports, after they were written up, were locked down within the computer files, and only the chief and us had access to them.
Okay.
So the very first case that we did, we had over 30 people reporting Bigfoot along the San Juan River between Farmington and Shiprock. And they had gone to the local police department. The police lieutenant came out and basically laughed at them. And the reporter was standing right there. And he says, ha, 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 I wonder how much these people have had to drink.
Oh, my God.
And so, needless to say, that community wanted nothing to do with the police department anymore. They called us. We sent a 6-man team out. And you have to understand, the reservation is 27,000 square miles of land, basically in New Mexico, Utah, and Arizona. And we now have portions and ranches up in Colorado, too. So to get a 6-man team up is about a third of the department. And we spent basically 3 days and 2 nights out there with forward-looking infrared systems, night vision equipment, and going door to door, knocking on doors and talking to people and getting reports. At the end of the thing, we came out with foot track evidence. We came out with hair samples. Those were sent off to an independent lab, and it came back unknown carnivore.
Wow.
Which is unusual in itself, because if you know anything about DNA databases, DNA database is worldwide. And so if it was some kind of a gorilla out there, it would have flagged it immediately. For it to come up and say unknown carnivore meant that it did have DNA, but it couldn't determine what species or subspecies it came from. And but it was something that was there.
Yeah.
Those are, but the community felt better that at least there was a law enforcement agency out there talking to them, and they were a little bit relieved after that. So that's how everything started. And we just kept going for about 11 years. Toward the end, we were getting a lot of different cases, UFO cases, Skinwalker cases. And it was finally time for me to retire. So I had spent 31 years, which in my estimate wasn't enough, but they told me that they wanted to clear my position and make room on the budget to save a couple of ranger positions. So I was okay with that. Since then, the department has gone from the 15 that were there when I was there. When I first started, there were 40 rangers, and today it's down to, I think, about 8.
8 versus 40?
And the ranger's job is resource law enforcement. So we do all the fish and wildlife, all the forestry, mines, minerals, water resources, agriculture, archaeology, historic preservation. We go after medicine bundles that have been taken off the reservation. and hunt down things at auction houses. And that was my specialty. And then we have a search and rescue mandate. And when we're needed in an emergency, we can do police work.
Oh, that's a lot going on.
Yeah.
When you investigated Bigfoot, what did you find very odd about it? Like
the strangest thing we found was that we tracked him. Me and Stan are trackers, and I've tracked people for 30 miles on foot. So, over several days, and caught them. So we track. Wow. We track. I've never seen, believe it or not, in my career, I've never seen a dog track a person. They always lose them. So we tracked a Bigfoot for a mile or more. The tracks disappeared in what we classify as trackable ground.
Interesting.
So it's almost like somebody just jerked him up into the sky. He's gone. But his tracks end. If he had taken another step, you would have seen another track. So then we backtracked it the other direction to see where he came in from. And his tracks, you're tracking a mile backwards, and his tracks just appear in trackable ground.
That's insane. We've interviewed a lot of people, and they say these Bigfoots just appear. What was that guy's name again? Dominic, the guy we talked to, where he said the Bigfoot appeared green and disappeared.
D.A. Roberts?
No, the other guy.
Ron Moorhead?
Ron Moorhead. We spoke to him, sir, and he said that he had an experience where Bigfoot just was in front of him, and then he turned green and disappeared right in front of him. So that right there correlates with everything that you're saying. That's very interesting.
I've talked to natives up in the Quinault Reservation in Washington State, and they've told me that they've seen Bigfoot looking at them from behind a rock or behind a tree, and watched him fade out and disappear.
That's exactly what this guy said. What's your opinion on that based off everything that you've done? What do you think is going on? Do you think they're just supernatural? Do they have some kind of, it can't be invisibility, because you would still have a physical weight. If you're invisible, this will be footprints. So what do you think's going on?
We came up in 2009 with a theory that a lot of this had to do with dimensions.
Okay.
That Bigfoot lives can appear in our dimension at will, or there's an opening that they see. Now, if you look at animals, and we've dealt with cattle a lot, and if you fence in a range and you put cattle in there, and they will walk that fence line and walk it just an everyday thing until they find a break in that fence, and then they'll move through and graze on the other side. We kind of think that these dimensional gates pop up every now and then through happenstance, or maybe they're well known, but they're transient. They don't stay open all the time. And when a gate opens up, I think these Bigfoot can sense it, and there's something here that they want. So they come through and, do what they do, and then they pop back, or maybe they're snap back, or they can do it themselves. We even came up with this idea that maybe Bigfoot, in a sense, was connected with UFOs. And the reason we brought this up was that we saw a correlation that every time there was a rise in Bigfoot reports, there was a corresponding rise in UFO reports, and vice versa. So we saw that over a lot of years of doing these investigations, that people would tell us that, they were seeing more UFOs at the time that a Bigfoot showed up. And we have one case where a UFO was flying over a community just a small group of houses where family members are all related to each other. And they had aliens running around on the ground that were about 3 feet tall.
What?
Like little grays?
No, they said that they were actually light green.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What they look like?
Yeah. They just said they were real small and they were running everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And,
that's scary.
And so the people locked themselves in their houses. But the one person grabbed an AK-47 and started shooting.
Did he hit anything?
he said he thought he hit one of them.
Oh, wow.
But during this whole thing, they were inside the house, and the front door, just like a horror movie, started to bow in, like something was pushing from the outside that was big and heavy. And they said that it was a Bigfoot that had showed up with that UFO and was running around the neighborhood too. Oh, wow. Nobody came out. They called the state police, New Mexico State Police. They were told that's not our job. They called the county. The county says we don't handle that. They called Navajo police, and Navajo police says, well, we don't really take care of those. So they called the fire department. And the fire department actually responded and started heading out there with lights and siren. They got out about a mile away from the residence and saw the UFO circling, turned their truck around and went the other way.
Oh, wow. Oh. I mean, like, who are you supposed to call at this point? I'm not trying to make light of this because I believe everything you're saying. I mean, me and Dominic, I don't know if you heard our podcast, but we've seen some crazy stuff in our life. At this point, I mean, who are you supposed to call? Who are you supposed to call? Supposed to call the Ghostbusters? I mean, there's no one to call. No one believes you,
So what happens the next day is that Navajo police and New Mexico State Police both show up, and they're all doing what cops usually do, which is stand in a big group and smoke cigarettes and shoot the bull. And as they're standing there, one of the witnesses said that a black Cadillac Escalade showed up. It was really new looking, had government plates. And they said that, or at least what they thought were government plates because they were white. And they said that the person got out. He was wearing battle dress fatigues, had armed to the teeth, had all kinds of web gear on, gets out and goes back and talks to these officers. After he talked to them, he went back to his vehicle, opened up the rear, and takes out what they described as an ice chest. And he walks over to where on the ground somewhere nearby and opens this ice chest, and they said smoke came out of it. And he picked up something off the ground, put it in the ice chest, closed the lid, and walked back to the vehicle, put it in the back of the vehicle, and left.
What was that? What do you think it was with the smoke, like Freon?
It was a black Cadillac Escalade. From my experience, having worked for the government, I know that the government only buys GSA, Government Services Administration. Excuse me.
Bless you. God bless you.
GSA only buys from the low bidder. So they're usually Dodges or, Fords or whatever, Jeeps. And they get the cheapest thing that they can buy because it's a government services contract.
This guy had an Escalade.
So you won't see them buying Escalades. We think that it could have been part of Bigelow's team, their the NIDS team of investigators. These guys were all special forces background, prior military. So he drives off with it. Stan went over there because he lives in Gallup, New Mexico, and he went over there to see if he could verify some of the stories that were coming out about it. And he went to the police department Now, understand that we know all of these officers. We had worked around them, with them. So we know a majority of them. And these officers that he knew would not talk to him. They would not even give him the time of day. He went to the fire department. They wouldn't talk with him either. So it was all, I'm sure, they were given the word, keep it quiet, don't talk about it. It's all top secret. And so we think that Bigfoot is dimensional, that these dimensions, when you think about a dimension, it's something that's vibrating at a different frequency than ours. And so we cannot see it. It's not tangible. You can't touch it, but it's there. And according to what science believes, string theory posits that there could be as few as 10 and as many as an infinite number of other dimensions. Just like our vision, we only see in a very narrow spectrum here. Right. And on one side you have X-rays, and on the other side you have infrared. But we see in a very narrow visual band. So it's very possible that Bigfoot comes back and forth through these gates, so to speak, and we think that the gates, we think about dimensions as walls, like there's two walls here, and they're right next to each other, and you have to penetrate that other wall, like you see on some of these science fiction shows. But what we're starting to wonder is if they're more like clouds that are interlaced together and they're constantly moving. And every now and then one of these little openings just pops open. And I had a chance to meet with David Pilates, who does the Missing 411 series. And he just came out with a new show called Missing 411, the UFO Connection. And he's starting to think that the UFOs and Bigfoot and all those are also linked together.
What's your speculation on that ice chest? What do you think was in there?
I think it was filled with dry ice to keep something frozen or in stasis. And I think that if one of these little aliens had been shot, that they picked it up and took it for study.
Wow. That's quite a story there.
Really quick, with that being said, because you said how government agencies didn't really buy the expensive vehicles, what government agency do you think it was that showed up that had the money to spend on a brand new Cadillac Escalade? Because Escalades are a lot of money right now. They're like 80 to 100,000 at least.
Well, you're talking about somebody that is a contractor, most likely. And these guys, you heard about the ATIP program that received about $22 to $24 million over 6 years. A lot of that money went to Bigelow and his team, and they were doing, and his investigators actually told us that they were trying, because he's in the aerospace field, he was building habitation modules for space stations that you could make out of Kevlar, and you could fold them up, make a real small package, take them up there, hook them up to the space station, air them up, and deploy them. And they were made out of Kevlar for the micrometeorite strikes. Okay. So he was building those, and he was looking for something that can give him a lead on other aerospace competition in the way of technology.
Okay. Very, 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 very interesting.
And he's a billionaire too, so he can afford that kind of stuff.
Of course. He probably has a mithril from back in the day, some dragon skin. But With all that being said, what is your take on all this? Like, what do you think? What do you think's going on, like, in that area? It seems like a hot spot where you're at.
Well, we don't think it's any more of a hot spot than other places. The difference is that we don't have a lot of infrastructure as far as electrical, plumbing, running water, that kind of stuff. And for a lot of people out here, they don't have, they're still using oil lamps or kerosene lamps or, electric, battery powered lamps. And so they get outside, they look up, they have a culture that involves star people coming to them in the past and imparting knowledge. And so the traditional people, we ask them, how come you don't report these UFO sightings? And overall, they all tell us, if we report these things, there's a whole bunch, if you'll excuse the term, there's a whole bunch of white people that are going to come up here. They're all going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Yeah. And those sky gods are not going to come back again.
Yeah.
And we don't want to chase them away.
No, I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah, it makes sense pretty much when you start talking about it. You're going to have a bunch of government people coming up and a bunch of visitors, white people coming up and messing up the whole experience, I guess I would say. So
yeah,
everything you told me, man, that's one hell of a job that you had, man. Because me and my father grew up on a ranch and we saw UFOs, triangle UFOs. We saw orbs. We seen cryptids. We seen giant owls. We've seen so many things, but like, it seems like your job has showed you much more with evidence. And I'm just blown away by everything that you told me. So moving forward, I'm very interested in myself. If Dominic has anything to say, he can say it after, but I really want to know, because I feel like we had a skinwalker on our ranch, and I would like to know where that leads to with your whole experience on Skinwalker Ranch, if that's okay. And Dominic, if you have anything else to say, go ahead, please. But I would really love to know what happened there.
Yeah, go ahead. Dominic, you got anything?
Well, just going back to the star people, so evidently there's more experiences that have happened there that are not talked about. And I understand that, I get that. And because this could cause a craze where you got a bunch of, tourists going there and invading your land, and you don't want that. But my question is, these stories, these oral traditions were told along, these star people came and imparted knowledge. And what's your take on the star people? Do you think they're malevolent or benevolent?
I think that there's all kinds. If you look at, say, the Hopi tribe, which is right next door to us here, they also have a tradition of sky people coming to visit them. If we are now starting to think that the ancient peoples had control of some of these gates and they knew how to use them. Now, if you think about it, only their priesthood would know how to operate these things, because it would be steeped in religious belief. And in the 1600s, when the Spanish came, the first thing they did was to wipe out a lot of the villages, and they would kill the priests or the leadership. And the kiva, where the ceremonies were held, they would build the Catholic Church right on top of it. So every pueblo that you see across New Mexico and Arizona, where you see that Catholic Church up on the highest point, that's where the kiva used to be. And I think that a lot of that information was lost. So with that in mind, imagine the Hopis, when they make these Kachina dolls, everybody thinks, oh, they're just imaginative artwork, right? The Kachina dolls were originally made for children to show them what the different deities look like. There are over 250 to 350 separate Kachinas. Now, if each one represents a separate deity or entity, what if you had thousands of years to explore an infinite number of other dimensions and bring back information from them as to what the people look like there? And so you copied it as best you could and brought it into an oral tradition and basically worshiped them. And they, in some instances, they taught. In the Navajo culture, we have the Yebiche, which are considered the holy beings. And when you see Skinwalker Ranch and you see that figure standing there with the black hood on its head with the little white eyes, that's a Yebiche dancer. And I was actually able to tell the production people that that would be like me putting up a picture of the Pope and saying this is Satan incarnate, and all his cardinals are demons. That's basically what they're doing by saying that this is a skinwalker. It's not. So when the Yebiche came, every fall they have Yebiche dances. There's usually 10 or 12 dancers. The last dancer in the group is always called the clown. He does everything wrong. He does everything backwards. Everyone laughs at him. And the thing is the clown, or the last Yebiche, represents the five-fingered people. The five-fingered people are you and me. So here's the deities coming to teach us we shouldn't be having war with each other. We shouldn't be treating our fellow man any differently, and teaching us a way to live. And we turn around and we do the exact opposite. We don't listen.
What do you think of, I'm not too sure of the exact name, and I need to look it up. There's a place, I believe, is in Arizona, where they have those Native American buildings, and they're on a higher level, like on a mountain, and you can't really reach it, and it got evacuated really fast. What was the name of that, Dominic?
The Four Corners area?
No, it's like
Mesa Verde.
Yeah, it's on a high mountain, and there's like a bunch of
Anasazi.
There you go. And then they have a bunch of petroglyphs of all these ancient beings, like a serpent with a halo, and the giants with the handprints with 6 fingers. The story there goes, at least what I saw, or what I read, is that there was a portal that, while they were doing a bunch of Kiva rituals, and they were worshiping certain gods, and appeared a serpent god. And I'll give you the information. It was with Steve Quayle and Tom Horn and Timothy Alberino. They went out there to go to go investigate it. And there was that other Native American, I forgot his name too, man. It's escaping my mind, but he was very Chief Riverwind.
Oh, Joseph Riverwind?
Yeah, Joseph, yeah, him. And he said that the story goes that there was a portal opened up, a serpent god appeared, he had a halo, and he sent all these giants to come kill all the humans, and that's all the Native Americans that were there. And the evidence shows that the people left so fast in that area that they left all their belongings behind. Like, everything was left behind. Did you ever hear about that?
I've heard versions of that.
Yeah.
We have here the Anasazi.
Yes. Anasazi.
That disappeared. And it's said that the gods basically created a drought where all their fields dried up. They couldn't eat anymore. They couldn't forage very far anymore. And then they brought a dust storm that basically buried a lot of their places. So the Anasazi to the Navajo, the word, a lot of people, you'll hear them saying that the word Anasazi means like a weak enemy, but it doesn't mean that. It means a different people.
Oh, wow.
And the Anasazi, according to Navajo culture, were slavers. And the evidence for this is at Chaco Canyon.
Chaco Canyon. Sorry, that's what it was.
If you look at Pueblo Bonito, look at the architecture of the walls. And what they like to say, the Park Service will say, oh, these walls were all built in different epochs, of time. According to the Navajos, they were actually built using slave labor from different peoples that were enslaved.
Wow.
And so each slave group that, they got together based on language and culture, even being slaves. So it'd be like having Chinese and blacks and Mexicans and Irish and everybody else kind of doing what they do just like today. They form small communities amongst themselves and stick together. So they're building walls in the architectural styles that they grew up with building. And so you can go in there and look at the architecture of the walls and just in one location see 4 different types of architecture.
Wow.
Of how those walls were designed and built, the patterns on them. And so it's said that, the Navajo recognize that there are basket maker people. There are Anasazi people. There are cliff dweller people. The cliff dwellers, like up in Mesa Verde, actually were incorporated into the Navajo tribe. And there are clans that are related to the cliff dwellers that are there today. And then you have the Pueblos, which are the Hopis and all the other groups, and then you have the Dene, which are the Navajo people who were the Fremont. They knew of the Fremont, and they were called Anabajo, which meant the people who till. And so the Navajos kind of avoided the Anasazi as much as they could because of their reputation for taking slaves. And so they say that basically the gods destroyed the Anasazi and they are no longer here.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that. That's a lot of history too. And I also heard too that there was like in that area, how history says everybody was just kind of scattered around, making campfires, a bunch of nonsense. But I heard from the oral traditions that there was a massive city of hundreds of thousands of people, the Anasazi. Yeah. Is that true? Is that any kind of a...
Chaco Canyon was probably about maybe 15, 20,000 people there.
Wow.
It's not just the structure itself. That would be where all of your kind of rich people would live and your priests and all that kind of stuff. But you would have pit houses all over the place, everywhere else.
Wow.
And on the landscape. And those would be different.
Yeah, that paints a very different picture to what you're told in, regular history, which is a bunch of nonsense, in my opinion. But
well, history is always written by
his story,
the witness, right? and the Indian tribes were conquered, and we had an oral history. I don't know if you know this, but the government's way of looking at other people, if you do not have a written language, you are considered a savage.
Oh, yeah.
I heard that.
So because we didn't have a written language, they said, well, everything that they talk about is myth. But if you look at Navajo ceremonies, say an enemy way dance might have about 250 songs to be sung over 3 nights in a particular order. And the medicine man can't get any verse wrong. So otherwise he'll be talking to some angry people because it would negate the whole ceremony.
Yeah.
So he's got to get it right. And that's the kind of oral tradition they had, was that it was told exactly as they saw it or as it was told to them.
Wow,
Right.
into that.
Now, the Anasazi, did they ever battle with giants?
The Navajos have a storyline that talks in their history that talks about giants, and there were two twins that were brought up that were called the Giant Slayers.
I heard about that. Yeah.
So they are part of Navajo folklore, I guess you could call it. But they went and killed, and then there's other tribes. The Pawnees battled giants, red-haired giants.
Does that relate to Lovelock Cave?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure, because that's a
so
big.
There's a lot of stuff that goes on that we just don't know about.
Yeah, because from what I read, in Lovelock Cave, they found a giant skeleton sitting on a table with oysters still on his plate and in its being that they found, supposedly. And there's one cave, I don't know if it's the same one, that some were burnt. The giants were, or the Indians scared them into a cave and they burnt them alive. You heard of that one?
Yeah, that's kind of what happened there. Okay. And it was a valid concept to light a fire in the front and send the smoke inside the cave. We have an area called Massacre Cave over here near Chucans, Arizona, where Apaches came up and were raiding Navajo settlements, and they raided one in Newberry Mesa and took a couple of girls. And we're heading back down the Mogollon Rim to sell them into slavery. And on the way down, the Navajos sent a war party after them, but they rode to cut them off, kind of head them off the pass, right? Yeah. And they found out that they didn't go back through there, so they started backtracking. And over near Meteor Crater, when that thing impacted, it left a lot of tectonic cracks in the ground. And one of those cracks, they saw dust and light flashing off of it. And they found the Apaches had gone into that cave and with the captives and their horses. And so the Navajos killed the guards outside, barricaded the front, and brought in brush and lit it all on fire. And the Apaches, they said, killed their horses and were stacking up the carcasses in front of the cave, or, just inside, to try to keep the smoke out. And were pleading for their lives that they would give the two captives back if they would just let them go. And apparently they said the Navajos just laughed at them and kept it up until they all died. And then they caved in the front of the thing and just buried it all. So,
I mean, according to the traditional oral story, these giants were kidnapping the women, raping them, taking their livestock. I mean, I wouldn't blame them. I mean, if that's the way the story goes, you got to get rid of those things, right?
Right.
So
it was Dr. Mose. He's the Monument Valley Navajo Spirit Guide. He talked on a documentary with the late Tom Horn. He mentioned something about giants that are in stasis on reservation somewhere on reservation land. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's something that he talked about with Tom Horn.
I've also heard this too. Working in the Coachella Valley as a trainer, I have a friend who I'm not going to say his name unless he wants me to say it, but he's part of the Morongo tribe out here in California, and he says that they have giant skulls, locked away in the private reservation of giants. And they also say that there's giants that are asleep. I heard the same thing at the Morongo tribe. Just wanted to throw it out there.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. A lot of tribes have information that even other tribal members are not privy to. The late one of my friends that was with the Zunis, Clifford Mahouty, he passed away last year, but he was a Zuni elder, and he was actually kind of excommunicated from the tribe over there because he was letting out information about sky people and about the communications that the Zunis had with extraterrestrials or visitors. And so, he just kept on going. He was a really good friend of ours. But yeah, there's a lot of stories about that. And now with the Skinwalkers, that thing is universal. It goes all over the world. You find shape changers in Australia, in Africa, in Europe, in Thailand, just, all over the place. And so they're everywhere. The one that we talk about, of course, is only the Navajo Skinwalker. And we try to limit ourselves to that because to go further is just to compound things. There's so many different cultures. In the United States, most tribes have some version of a shape changer. And you have 574 recognized Native American tribes in the United States alone. There's another 566 up in Canada that are with First Nations. And so these are autonomous tribes that are distinct, in their culture and their languages and everything else.
Go ahead, Dom.
The Skinwalker. Now, when people encounter a Skinwalker, I don't know if you have or you know of them personally. Is it a cognitive change, or is it a cognitive and physical change? Or one or the other, that they actually change into something else?
They actually change. We think that they use a combination of this dimensional barrier, and they can slip into it, and they manipulate DNA.
Okay.
Little Navajo kids out here from a very early age are taught you don't leave your fingernail clippings laying around. You don't leave sweaty clothes. If you defecate or pee, then you bury it, cover it up. And you don't leave anything out there that a Skinwalker could get a hold of, even the hair on your brush or your phone.
So with that being said, because I have so many theories on this, so is it like some kind of witch doctor or kind of shaman that just collects this and turns other people by some kind of ritual using that DNA for some person, or is this some kind of genetic ability? Is it passed down? Is it some kind of hybrid entity? I mean, what do you, like, your opinion, sir? What do you think these things are?
They are individual people who have learned how to do this. You can put Skinwalkers, and we're only talking about Navajo here, into several different categories. They are, we call them witches, Navajo witches. And not to take away from Wiccan or anything else, this is just what's been told all these years. But for a Navajo Skinwalker, there can be young people that know how to make the change. They know the ceremony, they know the chants, they have the skin, and they use this to go out and basically terrorize neighborhoods. And then you have another group who are more serious about it, and they are learning. They get together in groups to have what we would consider a Sabbath, and so they get together in small groups and they teach each other how to do poisons, how to do different curses, how to shoot turquoise beads at people or pieces of bone, all this different stuff. You have another group that is mainly concerned with how to concoct different types of poisons and potions. And then you have one that they call frenzy witchcraft, which is somebody who's trained to be a medicine man that uses the evil side of it for their own advantage.
Do you think any of these entities, skinwalkers, could be a government experiment splicing DNA with humans and animals? Because I've heard also that the government is getting a hold of this ritual DNA, and they're making their own kind.
Yeah, the government's very interested in this. When me and Stan do our talks and our presentations, we'll often, do a call out to any military people in the audience that are there to take notes. And we tell them that, us, along with a lot of other Indian tribes in the United States, are not very trusting of the government. Because we have a long history of them trying to commit genocide against us. However, that being said, more Navajos join the military service than a lot of other groups, and a lot of them stay in, and a lot of them go into special forces or special operations type groups. So I think that what it is not so much patriotism as it is being raised as a warrior.
I've heard, I've talked to many people that have been in the military, higher ups, people who have experiences before they've seen dogmen or, wolfmen, whatever you want to call them, standing on 2 feet, and they have military attire on. So when I hear that, to me, I just think government experiment right away.
We know that these people, they can change, and they can change back. And they can walk right next to you. You wouldn't know them from anybody else. They just look like average Joe Blow. But the reason you don't let your DNA lay around is that if they get a hold of something of yours, they can change into somebody that looks like you.
Could they, for example, let's just say they, they take my DNA and they commit a crime. Would my DNA be at that scene?
Most likely it would.
Oh, wow. That's scary, man. That's terrifying. I just wanted to. Yeah. So they do this. We've seen where they've been shot, and it looks like a coyote. And the guy grabbed the leg of the coyote, and as he's dragging it to finish it off, it turned into a human leg in his hand. Oh, wow.
And he jumped back and he says, he asked his wife, what do I do? Do I kill it? Do I call an ambulance? What do I do?
That's wild.
So they end up calling the police. The police looked at it and said, we want nothing to do with this. They called an ambulance. The ambulance showed up, had a Navajo crew, and the crew just, they were recoiled, but they put it on the gurney and they took it into the hospital. They got into the hospital, and the doctors, the Anglo doctors, chased out all the Navajo staff in the ER and proceeded to do emergency surgery on the guy and saved him.
That's an absolute trip. You're blowing my mind. So,
but they are real people just like you and me, and they can be killed. I've had grandfathers that shot them and killed them. So, but it's a very dangerous type of thing because they can kill you. The poison, the Anglo doctors don't know what it is. I've seen several people that got poisoned. And in one case, the guy stayed sick for a year and a half and almost died several times. Another one was so sick that he said he was basically laying on the bed in a pool of sweat, vomiting out one side and diarrhea out the other.
Oh my Lord.
And his wife and a neighbor picked him up, dragged him out to the truck and put him in there and drove almost 100 miles to see a medicine man.
Jesus.
And the medicine man asked, he just looked at him and he says, "You've been poisoned by a skinwalker." And he says, "If you had been another hour or two," he says, "you would have died."
Yeah, I've heard that before. So with that being said, when these skinwalkers turn into whatever they turn into, do they turn into, like, for example, let's just say the skinwalker has the ability to turn into a wolf. Do they turn into an actual wolf on all fours that looks like another wolf? Or are they like these wolf men or these dog head creatures that they see standing on their two legs, hybrid, have, pumping arms? Like, do they turn into like a regular animal, or they turn into like a half human? Like a skin, like for example, the Wendigo, stuff like that. Do they turn into that, or is it more like a straight animal?
We've seen all types out here. We've seen some that look like coyotes or wolves. Some that can even look like bobcats or mountain lions. Some that can look like deer. I had one where a woman passed by and saw what she described as a half kangaroo on the bottom and a man's body on the top. And so obviously this guy got a hold of a hide of a kangaroo.
I'm out.
So there's some really weird stuff. We've seen some that would resemble what everyone talks about as a rake, something that's almost white, formless, long arms, 6-7 feet tall.
I'm out of there.
So yeah, there's all different types. The only thing is that in my interviews, I've actually talked with some that were skinwalkers before, and they tell me that when the change is affecting them, that their vision gets blurry, that there's a shift in the spectrum to red, which means that everything for them is accelerated, and they can run as fast as cars can driving down the highway. And but the other interesting thing is that their minds become almost animalistic. So they don't think in human terms anymore. And I think this is the big drawback for anything that the military is trying to do with it, is that if you had soldiers that couldn't follow commands, that would be pretty rough on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Me and Dominic just heard a story from one of our friends, Tony Merkel. He has a podcast called The Confessionals, and he had an episode where someone was telling a story. I'll make it short. It was out in Arizona, of all places, and long story short, they were going to this weird house, and they got chased out by a car. But the last time they did it, the guy looked in the rearview mirror and he saw 2 deers keeping, like you just said right now, Mr. Jonathan Dover, you said that they can keep up with cars. You just blew my mind when you said that. This guy had a story where he looked at the rearview mirror for 1 split second. He had someone in the back seat with him, and he screamed at the same time that he saw it. He saw 2 deers pacing with the car at 40 miles an hour, running on their 2 feet with their arms pumping like a human. Remember that story, Dominic? That blew my mind. You just confirmed it because it kept up with the car. That's terrifying. Yeah. That's terrifying.
Yeah, we have a lot of places out here where people don't drive at night because they say that there's they'll have a skinwalker come running up on the side of the vehicle.
Oh my God.
5 miles an hour and bang on the door or bang on the window.
That's what happened to this guy.
And they just don't drive at night in those areas. So yeah, they're out here, and they're not to be trifled with. I would not search for them. We had a producer that came out that got sick because of that. So we cautioned people, and there was an episode that we did with Beyond Skinwalker, where they wanted to look for skinwalkers, and we told them no, we're up there to gather scientific information. We got the scientific information, and skinwalkers showed up. And as soon as they said, during this time, we're doing all these experiments, and the wind, this is 1 o'clock in the morning, the wind is kicking up. It's 15 degrees. And we had this wind. Every time we'd say, let's try a different experiment, the wind would increase. We were having 70-mile-an-hour gusts of wind ready to blow us off the cliff face, And finally, we heard a scream from down in the canyon, a woman scream. And, the medicine man and Stan had both heard it, and they said, that's a skinwalker. And one of the producers says, maybe we can get it on film. And I had told them previously, if you start looking for these things, we're going to call it quits. And so I told them, I says, that's it. We're calling it quits. And as soon as they agreed to that, the wind stopped suddenly. It was like being in the eye of a hurricane.
Wow.
And so we says, okay, everybody, let's pack up. We were frozen. We still had a 3-mile walk ahead of us.
Wow. That sounds eerily similar to the ranch we lived on. Hearing this creature out there more times than I'd like to remember. Sounded like between a woman screaming and a chicken and a goat being killed. Go out there, out in the desert, spotlight, absolutely nothing. Close the door, it's right there again within 20, 30 feet of your back door. I mean, it might have been a skinwalker. It might have been, because I know my uncle shot a big owl, and he says the eyes were changing different colors, and inside of it was
human hair.
Women's hair.
There was no organs, no blood, human hair. This is, yeah.
So yeah, I get it. I get it. It's just, that's wild.
Yeah, so we tend to try to protect ourselves through various methods, prayers and smudging and things like that. So it's nothing to be taken lightly, I guess, is what I want to leave you with that.
Right.
Very frightening stuff. Now, with Skinwalker Ranch,
Skinwalker Ranch,
there is a romantic story that says that after the long walk, the Ute tribe had provided scouts for the military to round up the Navajos. Navajos and Utes are way back. They were traditional enemies. They would battle each other, just like, I guess, Germany and France. So, they had this thing. They traded with each other. They were on friendly terms most of the time, but there would be raids that would occur. And a lot of times these raids were young people trying to prove themselves as warriors. And so they would go on horse stealing expeditions and create conflict that way. So this kind of stuff was in the background. The Utes provided scouts for Kit Carson and the U.S. Cavalry, and they basically rounded up Navajos, but they used Sherman's tactics on Sherman's march to the sea. So they burned everything. They destroyed all the hogans that where they lived. They destroyed the fields that they had food planted in, and just really, and then rounded them up and force marched them to Fort Defiance. And they held them there between San Benito and Fort Defiance along those cliffs. And then when they got them all together, they force marched them on 3 different routes. One of them went through Santa Fe. And there they were marched through the middle of the streets and put on display. So after they got to Bosque Redondo, they spent 4 years there. And so the romantic story says that the Navajos, knowing that the Utes were present, cursed the Ute land and caused skinwalkers to appear there. That story is not true. It's a wonderful tale or fable. My research has found that not only the Utes, but the Fremont were trying to keep what they considered something evil at bay at that location. And so there are stories that go way, way back about that area, that you weren't to go there, you weren't to talk about it, just leave it alone. And so that's what I found out, is that, you see it in the petroglyphs of the Fremont themselves, and they have a ceremonial site up on one of the mesas between the Utes and the ranch itself, mm-hmm. that they were utilizing. And we found out that this was another possible portal location that I identified, and they found out through scientific examination that there was something there.
What's your take on these petroglyphs? 'Cause I did watch the show, and I don't know, does it look like some kind of constellation drawn on these rocks, but there's definitely a portal, something going on there, but I don't know, what's your discernment on it?
Well, the spiral that you're seeing is considered a sign of migration. Okay. And what we've done is we've reinterpreted that to show, because the Navajos in their migration to this world came through several different other worlds, a world of darkness, an aquatic world, a world of insects and animals and giants. And then they saw a hole in the sky and they put something up there. They say a reed, and they climbed up through this hole and they came into this world in a place called Dineta, which is up near the Four Corners region, and came into this world. So, we started looking at that and thinking, this could be a dimensional gate that they're referring to. Right. And Skinwalker Ranch found a possible gate that's 35 feet up in the air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I did that. I did see that.
We like to think of these things as though they have to be ground level and they have to look like a door. Not necessarily.
Right. Now, you said that the ancients, they did this to hold back something evil. And I know there's a lot of poltergeist activity, UFOs flying around, Bigfoots come out of portals, giant wolf dogs. What do you make of all this? Is the wolf dog a shapeshifter or something coming out of another dimension? I mean, what's your take on all this stuff?
And many people have seen this wolf dog too, so I want to know.
Well, he could be a shapeshifter, or more than that, he could be coming out of a different dimension, which is probably why the bullets didn't affect him, because if he's vibrating at a different frequency, it's not going to hurt him that much. And then he takes off and he leaves tracks, and then they lose the tracks. They can't find him anymore.
There's also stories, though, where they shoot this thing and chunks of meat comes off of it and the meat stays there.
Affect it.
Like, what is that? Like, I'm just blown away how this thing could get shot and have its skin fall off and it just be fine. It's just it's crazy to me.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. If I did,
neither do I.
We'd all be bulletproof.
No kidding.
What's your?
There's just so much, but we have areas on our reservation that'll match up with what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch. We just don't talk about them all the time, and we don't tell people where they are or anything like that.
Yeah, I understand that totally. What's your take on cattle mutilations? Just mutilations in general. What do you believe in your years of researching? What's the end game? Why are they mutilating cattle and different animals and taking certain body parts?
Well, there's one theory that the aliens themselves, or the Greys, use a form of osmosis to get nutrients. Osmosis is taking in nutrients right through your skin. So they're thinking that a lot of this stuff is being used that way. Some are saying that, just like at Dulce and Archuleta Mesa, that they're being taken to underground UFO bases, and the DNA from there is being used to recreate other drones, so to speak, kind of like a robotic alien that can, on a some level, do things almost like building your own slaves. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of speculation about it. We look at facts, so we don't have facts that go that direction. So we do speculate. I mean, we're curious. We want to know, but we don't have anything definite. Yeah. And I don't know if I want to get abducted and get any definite.
No, not at all. What's your take on what may be buried in the Mesa? Could it be some type of rare mineral that's putting out some kind of magnetic field that's warping, a tear in time and space? Is it something along those lines? I mean, possibly.
Well, they have energy there. They don't know what it is, and it's an ovoid shape that's under the Mesa that they've determined. Yeah. And they've also determined that there are other like passages under there, but they still don't have enough information. They've tried to drill into it. They couldn't drill into it. They said that the material that came out of the drill was similar to the ceramic material that they used to put on the space shuttle for reentry. And these composites would not have been possibly created by any ancient culture. So they just don't know. I don't look at it as like a battery or an energy source as much as I see it as a capacitor. When you have a capacitor, you have something that can store energy, and at a certain trigger, that energy can be released. So, we use them all the time in vehicles and electronics and everything else. In this case, I think that when certain vibrations show up, certain frequencies, that energy can be released, and that's how people are getting injured over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw an episode where you had some tribal members come out and play some music, the drums and all that. That was really interesting. I guess that frequency stirred something up.
Yeah.
And there was I saw there was a UFO that went through a mountain and just disintegrating to the side of the hill. It's just crazy.
Well, that episode came up because of a conversation that I had with the crew up there. And I actually got to ask Travis Taylor if he was familiar with Nikola Tesla's 369 theory. And Tesla, a lot of people just said the guy was nuts, but he basically got us alternating current. Otherwise, we would have been all DC current or direct current. He actually invented the radio before Marconi did, and they just recently gave him credit for that. He had numerous patents out there. He had a small box he called an earthquake machine. He put it next to a building, and the building almost, rattled itself to pieces. Wow. And he had to pull it away and shut it off. What's interesting is that when he died, the FBI raided his room and took all his papers, and nobody's seen those ever since. So, but he had this theory that 3, 6, and 9 were magical numbers. And this is what I told the crew up there. He gave each one attributes, and he said 3, if you take 0, 1, and 2, it equals 3. 6 is a multiple of 3. 9 is another multiple, but it's also a prime number. And so he started looking at these. There's all ton of information on YouTube about the 369 theory that you can look at. And he gave each number attributes. So he said that 3 represented energy, 6 represents frequency, 9 represents vibration. And so he says if you had the key to all 3 of those, you could do anything. Wow. And so what I told the people at Skinwalker Ranch was that you guys have energy. You have that thing in the Mesa. I says you have frequency, that 1.6 gigahertz that keeps popping up. I says, but you don't have the vibration yet. And that's what that drum group was there to experiment with, because they just had them beating on the drum by itself with no singing. And that's when the high-speed camera picked up 2 UFOs that were diving into the Mesa.
Wow. That's pretty.
Yeah, I saw that. That's how they do that. I have no idea.
Well, they also just go in the ocean. Most UFO sightings are on the coast of all the ocean. I mean, a lot of them just go right into the water. They come out of the water. So, and then the mountains too. And
if you or I did that, they say that if you're a falling body reaching terminal velocity and you hit the water, it's like hitting concrete.
And they're going right through it.
Yeah.
With the water, there's no splash. They just go right in. All the sailors and all the people on the coast that seen UFOs, they just go right in. There's no splash, nothing. That's very interesting.
Well, even Bob Lazar posited that these craft are not they're not propelled like we like to think. You know, we think that it has to be pushed to get somewhere. He says that they could be impelled, which is that they pick something way out there and grab onto it and pull themselves toward it. So different way of thinking, but very, very interesting concept.
Yeah, I do remember him saying something about that. They focus their gravity amplifiers ahead of them and they kind of tumble forward, something like that.
Right.
And I guess he says when they glow, it's because they're ionizing the air around them, and I guess it heats up the air around the craft and it starts glowing. The ionosphere, whatever. However he explained it, that's why the air glows around them. It's just really strange.
Yeah. And that's why when you try to take a picture of one, it kind of shows up as blurry. Yeah. Because there's that field around it that helps it to move.
What's your take on top of the Mesa? There seems to be a rock formation in the form of a spiral, and and that one show on Skinwalker Ranch, it showed something protruding out of the area, like it looked like a big worm to me, like a funnel, like a tornado.
Well, that big worm, Pete Kelsey was up there doing photogrammetry. Now, in photogrammetry, what you do is you send a big drone. I mean, this is an 8 blades, all around this thing. And it has a high-speed camera on the bottom, a LiDAR camera that can take numerous pictures. And then what it does is each one of these small, tiny pictures, it stitches them back together. And you can see a 3-dimensional representation of the terrain down below. And you can take away vegetation and do all these interesting things. That's how they're finding all these Inca cities down in South America now. So what he did with that is they had two anomalies. One occurred at the Triangle, where the photos that were supposed to be on the ground and stitched together were suddenly up in the sky, and it looked like a little tornado of photos. And they looked at it, and the other place was at that those rocks, and they found them there. So when I looked at it, I recognized it as a some kind of a ritual site that was being used for ceremonies, and I told them then, because there was a spiral symbol there, that could be a portal location. And when they did the photogrammetry, they found out that not only at the Triangle, but there was a possible evidence of a portal.
That's mind blowing. When I watched that episode, like, wow, look at all this stuff going on there. You got all kinds of just strange things going on. You know, hot spots, cold spots, people getting sick from radiation, and all these weird things going on there. I mean, for me personally, I don't think I'd want to go there, even for scientific, even just be the curious watcher or something. I don't think I'd want to, because I think in those situations you have a good chance of getting a hitchhiker attached to you and bringing it home. That's just how I feel about it.
I mean, I think when you have, just in my opinion, when you have the body of Christ with you, I don't think anything can mess with you, in my personal opinion. But I haven't been there either, so I wouldn't know.
I don't.
But I mean, I'm not scared of. I'm not scared of anything. I'm not scared of anything.
I've been there maybe 4 or 5 times now, and what I can tell you is that every time I go there, I do protect myself.
Amen.
I do my smudging. I pray, and I have the intent that what I'm doing is going to protect me. Yeah. And so that's probably the most important thing. You don't just go through the motions. No. It's much more than that. And so far, I have felt protected, and I haven't come out with anything negative.
Yeah, I would love to go out there with you. Check it out. I would love to.
The other thing that both me and Stan subscribe to is that if you present something negative, you know, to get a reaction, the physics tells us for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so if I throw a rock to get a response, I might get a rock thrown back at me, which is not good. But if you go in with a neutral idea that I'm protected and I'm going to observe, and if you want to manifest, you go right ahead. But I'm just here to observe. I'm not here to harm you in any way or do anything wrong. And that's just cultural. So, you know, thank goodness I haven't been injured. I don't take it for granted. You know, it's just one of those things. You have to have a strong spirituality to do this stuff.
Yeah, it kind of goes with the whole thing, the whole experiment where if you're growing a plant and you yell at it and you curse at it, it doesn't grow as well as if you say good things to it. You ever heard of that before? When you yell at a plant or you talk good to it, it grows different. It's kind of the same thing.
Or play classical music for it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it grows more beautiful in different ways. So I really do believe all that is true. So like you said, you got to go out there with protection, and I don't fear anything as long as I have my protection. I would definitely go out there and investigate, but I wouldn't also stir the pot either. Because right. there's also levels in my belief. I don't know your belief, sir, but in my belief, just because you believe in God and Jesus doesn't mean you can go out there and do whatever you want. There's also higher levels of entities that you could only encounter with principalities. Some principalities and entities are a lot stronger and need a lot more authority than what you have. So I don't believe I can just go out there because I believe in Jesus, everything's going to be good. There's also levels to this. Different entities have different higher levels, in my opinion, what I believe.
Well, if you look at what he allowed to happen to Job.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, Job didn't ask for any of that. He didn't even go out on a ghost hunting expedition.
Yes, that's true.
And all that stuff happened to him. So, you know, you have to look at those kind of things too.
And I also tell people that you can't just also pray everything away, because if that was the case, David didn't have to fight Goliath. Of course, David prayed, but he had to pick up the rock, hit him in the head, take the sword, and decapitate him at the same time. You also got to take action. So I believe, you know, I get where you're coming from. I like that. I like that Job story. That's a good one. Amen.
Absolutely. Any other questions you want to ask Jonathan, Lionel, before we close out?
Yes. It's just, you know, if you don't mind me asking, what is your belief, like your religion? If you know, just asking. You have a belief, a certain belief?
I'm a born again Christian.
Oh, amen. Me too. I was hoping
and
that. Yeah.
I have been since a very early age. I went to about 3 years of Bible college and studied all different stuff, you know, apologetics and just everything, you know. Got into the Greek Septuagint, the Latin Vulgate, and studied those. So I have a background in that. All my classmates went on to become preachers, and I went into law enforcement instead. Amen.
I'm very happy that we're on the same page, man. God bless you, and I'm happy for your
Now, at the same time, and I know this may ruffle some feathers out there.
It's all good.
But I take the best of that, and I take the best of the culture.
No,
yeah.
Because believe it or not, there's a long history, and we could do several shows just about the history of religion in America.
Let's do it.
But the what it comes down to is that for Native Americans to become Christian, you have to throw away your culture. That's what's taught. And I think that's wrong. I think, you know, if you're French or German or any other ethnicity, you can keep your culture and keep your religion at the same time. But Native Americans are told you have to be a Christian, so you can't go to powwows, you can't go to ceremonies, you can't do all these other things because, you know, that's Satan. And so there's a lot of cultural stuff that I was taught on how to protect yourself. And in it, you pray, but again, it's not the prayer, and it's not the things that you're doing, the smudging or whatever you're doing. It has to do with intent. And most people don't have that intent when they pray. And they don't have that intent when they do something to protect themselves. So I protect myself. I smudge with the intent that that's going to protect me. And you know, I've been told that by other people that if I came into a room and you could see them, there's probably a whole bunch of ancestors standing behind me that are there protecting me also.
Amen.
So yeah, there's a lot going on, and so yeah, you know, I bridge both worlds.
Really quick, I just want to go on that. I don't really know what to go with that, but when I hear that, when the Bible says you're not supposed to pray to the dead, right? You're not supposed to pray to the dead, but how do you know that the people that have died have gone to heaven? Because when you go to heaven, you're alive. You know what I mean? So when you're praying for your ancestors or the saints, the Bible says they're alive. I don't know the answer to that, but it's the difference between the dead and the alive. You know what I'm saying?
My ancestors.
No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm saying like
all
there's
I know is that people tell me that they're there.
Yeah, amen. No, I agree with you. I'm saying I agree with you. I'm saying, like, let's just say your ancestors passed away and they believed in Jesus Christ and they're in heaven. You wouldn't be praying to the dead because they're alive with Christ. Right. That's what I'm trying to say. That's my
yeah. Let the dead bury the dead.
Yeah, amen.
So, there's a lot of theological principles that we can get into, and then you could get down to even the part where are you premillennial, are you millennial, or are you postmillennial about the rapture? There's and again, it's religious dogma depending on what
it is
what group you're from. Yeah. And so it's really funny when you get into that. They tear themselves down arguing about minute details when they're missing the big picture. Mm-hmm. And but I use a lot of if you look at a Catholic priest and they're carrying that urn as they walk down through the church, that's smudging. They're finding out now that the smoke from the smudging, whether you're using cedar, sage, or sweetgrass, is antimicrobial. And so it's actually good for you. And it also creates negative ions, which are also good for you. So their science is finding out a lot of interesting things about things that we've done forever. Yeah. And it's just part of our culture that we use, that we incorporate.
Right. I'll have to find out more about my other side of the culture, the Yaqui tribe.
Yeah, we do got Indian, Native American in us on our grandma's side. Yeah. Rest in peace.
Yeah, I had to do a lot of study to find out about my history. And I can trace it back to 1864. Wow. And that's about as far as I can go. And then on the other side, I can trace it back to 1900.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, we need to dig into that sometime here. I would
love to have you back and pick your brain, sir, because you're getting me all, you know what I mean? I would love to talk to you more. I enjoyed this conversation very much. I thank you for coming on. I really appreciate everything that you've shared.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming on.
We got to get out to the Four Corners and visit him someday.
Yes, I would love to.
Okay. Well, we will see you maybe sometime soon.
Well, with that being said, sir, I'm just going to close out the show. If you can, just hang on for a little bit while I close this out, and just want to talk to you for about 2-3 minutes after, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Sabbath at Midnight here with our guest, Jonathan Dover. Had a great time, had a great conversation, learned a lot about his oral traditions and his history with everything that he has in his lineage and his background in his profession. I really appreciate him for coming on, and I thank Dominic for getting him on here. So thank you for listening to Sabbath at Midnight.